Welcome to ESI Africa Insights. Today I'm in conversation with Mr. Kumwenda, who is the CEO of Eskom Malawi. Welcome.
Thank you. Most welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, let's jump straight into it. I'm keen to understand, what is the energy sector complexion in Malawi?
Yeah, in Malawi, as you are aware, our energy sector is divided into sectors. We have generation, which is a GENCO, if you're aware. Then we have transmission, distribution, single buyer, and system market operation, which is Eskom. So Eskom, our mandate is just to distribute and then transmit power. But for generation, it's outside of Eskom. So that's the setup for Eskom Malawi.
Okay. And what is the energy mix like?
Yeah, as of now, we have mostly hydros. Maybe I'd put that 80% hydros and 20% solar PVs. Yeah, so 80 hydro, base load, and 20 variables.
Good. Just tell me, in terms of progress that has been made in terms of connection rate, what is access rate now in Malawi?
As of now, we're still very low. I would put it at 18% for this year. But up to last year, I think it was around 13%, 11, 13%. Mostly through the national grid. We are not yet there in terms of off-grid, but we're trying to make strides, make sure that we have access to electricity through even the off-grid areas where it's not commercially viable for Eskom to go. Other IPPs can go and venture in off-grid connections. As of now, yeah, I'd put it 18% overall.
Good. So you are a CEO of one of the biggest utilities in Malawi. So I wanted to find out, what are some of the challenges that you are seeing right now, and maybe broadly speaking across Africa, that are being faced by utility companies?
The biggest challenge that I see is maybe an African problem, is that the tariffs are not cost effective enough. Yeah, so we wish it was the opposite. Because for Eskom, for example, Eskom Malawi, our sources of revenues basically is tariffs, then grants here and there, then loans. So if your tariffs are not cost reflective enough, it's difficult to maintain the grid or expand the grid. The other challenge that we face as a country is lack of forex, foreign exchange, because basically 95% of our imports are imported. So if you don't have forex, then it becomes a big challenge. The other one, which I think is an African problem, is vandalism. We still have issues with vandalism, people getting copper wires across to other regions for various reasons. So yeah, vandalism is one of the major issues that we are facing. And the other one for Malawi, and I think which is facing other neighboring countries like Zambia, is if you know Malawi very well, all our hydros are along one river. So in the event of a catastrophic environmental event, then we are done. Yeah. So
And I think I can remember the issue with Capachiro not
Yes.
so long ago.
yes,
Yeah. How severe was that flooding situation?
it was very severe. There's nothing that could have been done. Unfortunately, as I said, almost all of our generation capacity in terms of hydros are along one river. We had other technical problems, but lucky enough, within a year, we managed to restore the Kapchira hydropower station.
Okay, now that's quite interesting. I want to ask you something very specific, because we're seeing this as a general trend across Africa now. Botswana has had a total grid collapse. Kenya has had one. Nigeria have had a few. And I know that Malawi have been affected earlier this year as well. What were the causes of the grid collapse in Malawi recently?
Yeah, in Malawi, we had the grid collapses, I think last year, about 6 of them. If I may recall, one of the reasons was vandalism. Twice, our transmission towers were cut down. So the system naturally shut down. The other reason would be technical problems. Maybe one of the units, hydro units, shutting down, and that causes system total shutdown. The other one, which is very, very interesting, as I said, about 20% of our energy source is variable solar. So we have a solar plant, 100 megawatts, which means that for us to maintain stability of the system, we need to have some spinning reserves out of the hydros. So we have about 25 megawatts spinning reserves. But twice last year, this solar PV went off grid suddenly. So you can imagine from 100 to 0. It means that the spinning reserves are not enough to compensate for the loss. So the system just totally shut down. So those are the major reasons: vandalism, technical fault, and then the balance between base load and the variables in terms of system, balancing the system in terms of.
And how do you restart a grid? I mean, from zero. What is usually the protocol or the process of restarting a grid?
Yeah, it depends on the setup of the network. Like for Malawi, there are only two machines which can start the system. In this case, you recall that you just mentioned that Kapitula was offline. Yeah. So Kapitula was one of the machines that can start. The other one is Tezan. So we depended on Tezan to restart the system. It was a challenge. Sometimes the system would trip while starting for other reasons. So it took us a bit of time, on average, maybe 4 hours to restart the system. But the challenge now is when you're restarting the system, you don't just distribute 100%. You segment. You start maybe from Malawi, southern region, Blantyre, then you go up to the northern part of the country. By the time you get to the end of the grid, maybe talk about 6 hours.
6 hours?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
So if CEOs are watching these interviews, what would be your top tips to say, if you suddenly face a grid collapse, these are some of the things that you should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the issue is, as I said, Malawi got a unique setup that generation is not part of ESCOM. So I think the key is make sure that there is a proper network with the generator. If it's one unit, then it's much easier because you are within the same unit, then you can communicate very easy and see what can be done. But for us, ESCOM, we need consulting our friends who are in generation, a different entity from ESCOM. So I think the key is keeping the communication open.
Yeah.
Make sure that you find out what is happening. In some cases, for Malawi, our system is not, it's still partly manual, partly using SCADA. So you need to find out the reason why the system has collapsed. Where the system is well communicated to, it's much easier to find out the source of the problem. But where we depend on manual, it means physically going around find out where the problem is. Like for example, when the towers were cut down, we had to physically inspect the lines, see what has happened, to discover the towers were being cut out. The other bit is you need to have plan B. For example, these were steel towers, they cut down. You need to have spare, what you call emergency towers. Make sure that when the towers are cut down, you can immediately restore using these emergency towers. So it's very, very critical. You can imagine if you didn't have emergency towers or didn't have materials, to be chaotic. So I think the key is in communication within like in the case of Malawi, the two utility companies, make sure that you work as a team to restore the grid as soon as possible.
Thank you very much for those insights. But I'm also just thinking in terms of communication, how do you ensure that you are communicating correctly? I mean, the media will put pressure, the citizens want to know exactly where. How do you manage? Is there some form of information that you hold back, or you just update the public minute by minute as things develop?
Yeah, it depends on the reason why the system was shut down. So as I said, we sometimes issue a joint communique to the public that we've got this problem. That's why I think PR comes into play. You need to have strong PR teams, make sure that they communicate properly to the public. Because if there's no communication, then you're subject to a lot of speculation. So we have good PR teams in both Genco and ESCO. So if there's anything else, then we mandate them to do a statement, we vet it, and then we put out to the public that we have this problem. And the key is you need to give them timelines that we think within this period of time, power will be restored. If there are changes, then you immediately need to communicate that we are unable to restore power within what we said we would restore, but we're doing everything possible so that power is restored as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumwenda. It was good to talk to you. I mean, we could spend the whole day discussing these issues.
You're right.
But if you enjoyed this video and want to follow ESI Africa Insights, please feel free to subscribe and continue the conversation, reshare and repost to the wider community. Thank you very much for joining us and looking forward to the conference.